The storm hit without warning that evening, turning the gentle creek into a wild, screaming torrent. Caleb Sterling was leading his horse toward the old wooden bridge, when the cry cut through the thunderous sound raw with terror and desperation. He froze, there, caught in the angry swirl of the river. A young native woman fought against the water that clawed and pulled, determined to drag her under. He didn't stop to think. Stripping off his coat, Caleb plunged into the icy water, the current seizing him instantly. Her dark hair whipped across her face, the river soaking the vibrant fabric of her traditional dress and making every movement a battle for breath. When he reached her, her wide eyes met his fear and something deeper behind them, and she grasped his hand with a strength that startled him. They kicked and thrashed, each stroke toward the muddy bank a test of endurance. By the time Caleb hauled her onto solid ground, they were both shaking, breathless. The river having stolen more than just their warmth, she couldn't have been older than 19, coughing up water as her long hair dripped down her back. Caleb sat beside her, trying to gather his breath, when she looked up at him with eyes that seemed far older than her face. "You saved my life," she said. Her English was clear, measured, but it wasn't gratitude he heard. It was something else, something that crawled along the back of his neck like a chill. "Anyone would have done the same," he said, wringing water from his shirt. Even as the words left his mouth, he knew they weren't true. Most men would have ridden on, especially when it came to one of the tribes. Tensions had grown worse lately. Hostility simmered like summer lightning between settlers and native people. The girl stood slowly, every movement fluid despite the ordeal. Her black hair streamed like ink against her soaked dress as she studied his face with unsettling intensity. "My name is Ayanna," she said softly, "and you are mistaken. Caleb Sterling. Not everyone would have risked their life for someone like me." His breath caught. She spoke his name with quiet certainty. But how? He'd never seen her before, never crossed paths with her, or so he thought. "How do you?" he began. But Ayanna was already backing toward the tree line, fading into the storm-slick forest like mist. "Tomorrow, you will understand," she said. "When the sun reaches its highest point, you'll see what your kindness has awakened." Then she vanished, and all that remained was the thunder, the storm, and questions that refused to let Caleb sleep. He stood in the rain long after she disappeared, staring at the place where she had stood, a strange sense blooming inside him, one that whispered his life had just pivoted on an unseen axis. The next day, Caleb woke to the thunder of hooves, not a few horses but dozens. He rolled from his cot, heart pounding, and looked through the window, shielding his eyes against the glaring midday sun. What he saw chilled him more than the river had. From every direction, riders approached, 5 separate groups, each bearing distinct colors and markings of different tribes. They didn't ride like raiders or wanderers. They came with purpose, deliberate and united. As they neared, Caleb saw that every rider carried something: bundles wrapped in decorated hides, carved weapons, ornate containers that glinted in the light. These weren't raiding parties, they were emissaries. The first group halted at his fence. An elder with silver braids dismounted and approached the door, for other tribal leaders doing the same. Each man represented a different people, and the gifts they carried weren't tokens, they were priceless. Feathers carved with ancient symbols, beaded garments, a bow polished so finely it glowed like firewood in sunlight, a knife hilted in bone and inlaid with gemstones. These items were relics sacred, passed down through generations. Caleb stepped outside, hand near his gun, but the old man's expression was calm, even reverent. "You are the one who pulled Ayanna from the water's grasp?" he said. It wasn't a question. "I am," Caleb answered, mouth dry. "Though I don't understand why that brings so many of you here." The elder nodded, sadness darkening his eyes. "Because, Caleb Sterling, you have done something that changes everything. Something that hasn't happened in 3 generations. Another leader stepped forward, offering the shining bow. "This belonged to my grandfather's grandfather. It has never left our people's hands. Now it belongs to you." A second leader offered the knife. "This blade has protected our warriors for a century. It is yours now." Caleb looked from one gift to the next, stunned. "I don't understand," he said. "I just saved a girl from drowning. That's all." "No," The elder said gently, "You saved the girl. Ayanna is not just any child. She carries the blood of 5 tribes. She is the bridge between our peoples, the one prophesied to bring unity or destruction." The words struck him like thunder. Prophesied for 3 generations. We have waited for the sign. The one who would save the bridge from drowning, who would act with compassion, unaware of the cost. That person would tip the scales toward peace or toward war. Caleb felt the world shift beneath him. "I didn't know," he said. "I wasn't trying to be part of anything." "Exactly," another leader said. "The prophecy speaks of one who acts without knowing, and that's what makes it real." More gifts were laid at his feet. A ceremonial headdress, a necklace of bear claws, a painted shield older than any man present. But just as the last was placed, the elder's face hardened. "You must understand, not all tribes accept this prophecy. Some believe your act has triggered doom, not salvation. And they are coming." Caleb turned. Dust clouds rose on the horizon, more riders. But these bore no gifts. Their weapons glinted in the sun, not for ceremony, but for war. The elder's voice dropped. "They see you not as the uniter, but the destroyer." The ground seemed to fall away under Caleb's feet. As the war riders approached, faces painted in red and black, their leader rode ahead, a tall, scarred man who dismounted with a snarl. Koruk. His name alone sent fear down spines. Known across 3 territories, he was a war chief who resolved every problem with blood. "Caleb Sterling." Koruk's voice cracked across the land like a whip. "You meddle in what you do not understand. The bridge daughter belongs with us, not with a white man ignorant of our ways." The peaceful tribes shifted, gripping weapons. They were outnumbered. Caleb stood frozen. "Where is the girl?" Koruk demanded. "Where is Ayanna?" He opened his mouth to reply, but then he saw her. Ayanna stepped from the trees, different than before, radiant, commanding, her presence silenced both sides. Even Koruk hesitated. "You want to know where I am, Koruk?" she said. "I am exactly where I choose to be." Then her voice turned to iron. "And I was never drowning by accident." The clearing went still. Caleb's heart stopped. Ayanna turned to him, and for the first time, he saw what had been behind her eyes all along. Not fear, calculation. "I threw myself into that river because I knew you would be there," she said. "I knew you would save me, and I knew that act would bring all of you here." Koruk's face twisted. "You manipulated us. I did what was necessary." The prophecy was never about chance, it was about creating the moment where choice must be made. The elder's face paled. The memory loss, it wasn't real. Ayanna smiled coldly. "My mother taught me well. She taught me how to make people see what they expect." She reached into her dress and pulled out a stone, larger than the one the elder had shown. It glowed with a deep, inner light. The sacred valley was never lost. "I've known its location since I was a child." Caleb's hand hovered near his weapon. "Then why involve me?" "Because prophecy requires a choice from someone outside the bloodshed. Someone who acts from compassion, not obligation." Her gaze pinned him in place. "Tell me, Caleb Sterling, now that you know the truth, what will you choose?" She raised the stone. "The sacred valley holds weapons created by our ancestors. They can end the white man's advance or destroy every tribe that refuses to unite. Under one banner." The stone pulsed like a living heart. All eyes turned to Caleb, and the weight of history pressed onto his shoulders like thunder about to break. "The stone is the key to those weapons." Koruk stepped forward, his warriors close behind, their painted faces hard with purpose. "Give me the stone, girl," he growled. "It belongs with those willing to use it to protect our people. Protect them by starting a war that will consume everything." Ayanna shook her head slowly, the weight of her voice chilling the air between them. "That path only leads to death." The silver-haired elder's voice was barely audible. "And the other path, unity," Ayanna answered, her eyes unwavering. "All tribes working together, sharing power equally. But that takes trust that can only be proven through an outsider's choice." She turned to Caleb and extended the stone to him, its glow pulsating softly between them like a living thing. "This is why you were chosen, not by chance but by design." Caleb stared down at the shimmering object. Realization finally began to bloom in his mind. If he took the stone, he would be choosing sides in a conflict that could reshape the entire future of the territory. But if he refused, people would still die, just different people. The weight of it all pressed down like iron. Koruk's voice rang out like a knife through the silence. The white man cannot be trusted with such power. I will kill him before I let him touch what belongs to us. And if you kill him, Ayana said, calm and unshaken, you prove that our people are exactly what the settlers believe us to be, savages, driven by blood and fear. If Caleb dies now, the stone will shatter. The weapons will be lost forever, and our children will face an enemy we could have defeated. Tension thickened around them like a noose. Every warrior present gripped their weapons tightly. One wrong move, one heartbeat too soon, and blood would drench the earth for generations to come. Then, just as Caleb's fingers reached for the stone, a new sound rose over the stillness, the thunder of more hooves. This time, from a different direction, soldiers, the blue uniforms of cavalry burst into view, their rifles glinting coldly in the sun. A formation of mounted troops moved with practiced efficiency, a straight-edged blade cutting through the wild land. Caleb counted at least 30, led by a man whose face was carved by war and dust, Captain Morrison. They had come ready for battle. This is Captain Morrison, the officer barked as his men leveled their rifles. By order of the territorial government, you are all trespassing on private land. Disperse immediately or face the consequences. Koruk's warriors didn't flinch, they shifted, adjusting their aim, their fury now spreading toward the soldiers. Caleb and the peaceful tribes alike, the silver-haired elders' men responded, lifting their weapons in turn. In seconds, diplomacy dissolved into a three-way standoff. The land held its breath. Ayana still stood with the stone extended toward Caleb, her gaze locked on his. Choose now, she whispered, fierce urgency tightening her voice. Before they take the choice from all of us. Caleb's thoughts spun like storm winds. If he accepted the stone and stood with the tribes, he would become an enemy of his own people. The military would hunt him as a traitor. If he refused and sided with the soldiers, sacred knowledge would be destroyed, and the people he had come to understand, maybe even love, would die. But there was another path, one no one had seen. Captain Morrison, Caleb called out, stepping forward, letting his voice rise to reach the whole clearing. These people came to my land in peace. They brought gifts, not weapons. Whatever war you think you're stopping, you're about to start something much worse. Morrison's cold gaze locked on him. Mr. Sterling, you are harboring known hostiles. Step away from them now, or you'll be charged as an accomplice. If you were in Caleb's boots, what would you do? Would you trust the military to handle a truth they didn't understand? Or take the stone, risk everything on the word of a girl who had already proven she could twist the hearts of men to reach her goal? Caleb looked at Ayana, at the stone, then at the trembling edge of war hanging over every man present. There's something you all need to understand, he said, stepping toward Ayana. This isn't about choosing sides. It's about choosing whether we solve our problems like men or like animals. And he took the stone. The moment his fingers closed around it, a surge of energy rushed into him. It wasn't just power, it was presence, connection. Images exploded behind his eyes, battles fought beneath burning skies, tribes standing together against an overwhelming enemy, weapons that could crack mountains and split rivers. But then something deeper, older. Not weapons, tools of unity. Caleb understood. The ancestors hadn't hidden instruments of destruction. They had forged something more powerful. A test, a key. Captain Morrison, Caleb said, his voice shifting deeper, resonant. The stone's energy wrapped around his words, pulling every soul present into their gravity. Lower your weapons. What we face here, it's not a threat to this territory. It's the key to saving it. Morrison's eyes narrowed. You've got 10 seconds to surrender that object, Sterling. Step away from those people or be taken down. Koruk snarled, raising his spear. The white man thinks he can command spirits he does not understand. He'll doom us all. But Ayana smiled, a true smile this time. He understands more than you think, she murmured. The stone has chosen him. Just as I knew it would. The energy from the artifact pulsed, stronger. Caleb could feel it changing him, embedding ancient knowledge into every nerve. And he realized with growing certainty, there would be no going back. Not after this. The transformation was complete in a breath. Symbols on the stone once indecipherable now spoke to him with aching clarity. He felt the emotions behind them: hope, sorrow, resolve. The ancestors hadn't wanted death. They had wanted worth. This isn't power, Caleb said, turning slowly to face them all. It's judgment. The truth burned in his chest. The sacred valley isn't what you think it is, he said. It's not a vault of weapons. It's a place of testing. The ancestors saw this day coming when whites and natives would stand on the edge of war. So they created a trial. Koruk's face contorted with rage and disbelief. You lie. The stone gives power. No, Caleb replied, voice like thunder cracking the sky. It measures worthiness. And right now it's measuring all of us. Ayana's smile faltered for the first time. That's not. The prophecy spoke of weapons. It spoke of tools. Caleb cut in. Tools that could unite or destroy. But it never said those tools were forged from steel. The tool is choice itself. The weapon is what we become when we make the wrong one. The light of the stone blazed brighter, casting long, sharp shadows. And then, impossibly, the weapons in everyone's hands began to feel heavier. The air grew dense, metal resisting purpose. Morrison's rifle trembled in his grip. Koruk's spear dipped lower. What kind of witchcraft? Not witchcraft, Caleb said, locking eyes with every man. Truth. He saw past paint and uniform, straight into the fear lodged inside each of them. Fear of losing their land, their people, their pride. Fear makes cowards of us all. Koruk's spear now shook violently, not from nerves but from some invisible force urging it downward. The ancestors were wiser than we ever imagined, Caleb said, his voice echoing with ancient resonance. They knew any weapon could be misused, so they created something only a peacemaker could activate. The elder's eyes went wide with sudden realization. The drowning, the rescue, it was never about saving her body. Caleb looked at Ayana and saw her clearly now, not as a deceiver, but as a girl drowning in hatred, in burden, in a past she couldn't carry alone, just like all of them. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. Her voice, when it came, was barely a breath. I thought, if I could force the choice, if I could make someone outside our pain choose peace. You can't force unity, Caleb said gently, stepping closer. It has to be chosen, freely, by everyone involved. And now was that moment. The stone's light was nearly blinding, and within it, Caleb saw a terrible future waiting, one soaked in blood and vengeance, generation after generation raised on fear and ruin. Captain Morrison, Caleb called out, voice ringing with the weight of truth. Koruk, all of you. The stone is showing us what comes next. Look, see, what your choices create. And one by one, they looked. Captain Morrison saw his children growing up in fear, chasing ghosts across a burnt land. He saw his legacy crumble into dust. Koruk saw his people's extinction pride slowly starving them, their traditions buried beneath misery. And Caleb held the light steady, silently daring them to look deeper, to choose better. His culture wasn't dying in glorious battle, it was fading in slow, bitter poverty, in silence, in forgotten songs and barren soil. Koruk saw it all, and it hollowed him out. The future he'd believed in was crumbling, not from war but from pride. The silver-haired elder saw something just as devastating, a future where unity came only through mutual annihilation, peace not born of understanding, but because there was simply no one left alive to keep fighting. Ashes in place of tribes, a quiet too deep to bear. And yet, another path revealed itself, visions of children, white and native, laughing together as they splashed in shared rivers, trading posts buzzing with voices in a patchwork of languages, new customs blooming from the roots of old ones, communities where differences were no longer wounds, but threads in a stronger weave, a future where fire did not devour but warmed. The visions lasted mere seconds, but they etched themselves into the souls of everyone present, like lifetimes burned into memory. When the light finally faded, a hush fell over the clearing. Captain Morrison was the first to speak. His voice trembled, hoarse and broken. That was real. Caleb nodded, feeling the stone's warmth fading in his hands. as real as tomorrow's sunrise. The only question is, which tomorrow do you want to live in? Korik stared at him. His scarred face bore the strain of war, of belief challenged, of fear unmasked. Slowly, painfully, he lowered his spear. The ancestors showed many futures, he said quietly. But how do we know which one becomes real? Because we choose it, Ayana said, stepping forward. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, but her voice held like steel. Here, now, every choice we make, from this moment every word, every silence leads us either toward unity or deeper into the darkness. Morrison turned slowly, scanning the faces of the warriors who had been his enemies. But now, he saw them not as threats but as men, as fathers, sons, protectors. What are you proposing? He asked. The silver-haired elder lifted his chin, voice deep with heritage. A treaty, not just paper to be broken with the next convenience. A bond, witnessed by the stone. Our tribes will share the knowledge of the sacred valley. In return, your people will protect our lands, our sacred places, our hunting grounds. Morrison frowned. I don't have the authority to promise that. Then we make those promises to each other, Caleb said, stepping forward. The stone, still warm in his hand, seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. Man to man, family to family, let the governments follow, or be left behind. Korik loosened his grip entirely, the spear lowering to his side. And if your people break that bond, if they come for our land despite their promises. Ayana looked at him, her voice calm as winter. Then the stone will remember, and the next one faced with this choice will see what betrayal costs. Morrison pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his graying hair. My superiors, they won't understand. They'll call me a traitor. Some prices, Caleb said, thinking of the girl he'd pulled from storm-swollen waters just a day before, are worth paying. Hope was just beginning to bloom when a sudden crack shattered the moment. A rifle fired from the tree line. The bullet struck the stone in Caleb's hands, shattering it into glittering shards. Ancient crystal flew in every direction, but instead of breaking apart, the artifact released one last burst of energy. It surged across the clearing like a wave of living memory. From the trees stepped Colonel Hayes, rifle still smoking. Behind him, a dozen soldiers emerged, their faces hard with purpose. Captain Morrison, Hayes barked, step away from the hostiles. This ends now. But something had changed. The moment the bullet hit the stone, the energy had moved. It hadn't faded, it had entered them. Everyone, the warriors, the soldiers, Caleb, Morrison, even Hayes. A thread of connection now bound them all, one that could not be severed by bullets or barked orders. Morrison turned, no longer hiding what he'd seen. Colonel, with respect, you don't understand what's happening here. I understand plenty, Hayes snapped. You've been compromised by savages and their heathen magic. He raised his rifle again, aiming straight at Caleb. And you, Sterling, you'll hang for treason. Korik stepped in front of Caleb, planting his feet like a mountain. If you want to kill the Bridgewalker, you'll have to kill me first. The other tribal leaders stepped forward too, each forming a wall between Caleb and the barrel of Hayes's gun. And then one by one Morrison's own soldiers moved to stand beside them, weapons lowered, faces calm, eyes changed. The visions. One of the younger soldiers whispered. We saw them too. Hayes's face twisted with fury. You're all under arrest. Mutiny, no, Ayana said, her voice quiet, but cutting through every shout like lightning through pine. They're under the protection of something greater than your laws. She walked calmly toward him, her dress damp from dew and storm. From within it, she pulled a rolled paper, aged, but bearing unmistakable marks, the seals of 5 tribal councils and 3 territorial governors. An official treaty, signed, sealed, ready. All we needed, she said softly, was a witness from outside both worlds to bind it. Caleb stared at her, all rippling through him. You planned all this. The drowning was real, she said, eyes locking with his. My fear was real, but so was my hope. That someone would choose to save more than just one life. She looked down at the scattered fragments of the broken stone. It was never about the crystal. It was about what people do when the moment comes, when they can choose hatred or hope. Colonel Hayes kept his rifle raised, but Caleb saw the uncertainty now, the weight of truth pressing into his shoulders. The document in Ayanna's hands wasn't just a symbol, it was a reality, a path forward, one that didn't demand surrender, only courage. Morrison stepped beside him. The treaty lays out shared settlements, mutual protection, sacred sites guarded by both peoples. It's not surrender, Colonel, it's strategy. Hayes's weapon trembled, then slowly lowered. The fight drained out of him as politics, reality, and the undeniable current of change swept past him. He knew he'd lost. Months later, Caleb stood in the same clearing, now the heart of a thriving settlement, a place unlike any the territory had ever seen. White and native families lived side by side. Children grew up learning both tongues. Traditions blended, not erased. Disputes were handled by council, not guns. At the town center stood a memorial built from the fragments of the broken stone. Children played there, weaving stories about the glowing rock that once chose a man to carry something greater than power. Hope. Ayanna had married a young tribal leader. Their wedding had been a celebration for the entire community. She often visited Caleb, her children in tow, eager to hear the tale of the day the world had changed. One afternoon, as they watched those children laugh together in the sunlight, Ayanna turned to him. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. Caleb thought back to the man he'd been, the lonely rancher who trusted no one, who feared what was different. "Not for a single moment," he said. The treaty they'd forged that day wasn't perfect. Nothing made by human hands ever was. But it stood as proof that when people chose courage over comfort, when they reached for unity instead of retreating into fear, the impossible became inevitable. And in the laughter of children who would never know their parents as enemies, the shattered spirit of the sacred stone lived on.